Welcome to the board's September 13th, 2019 board meeting. My name is Greg Lippy. I'm the acting president of the board. As I call this meeting to order, I would like to advise all members of the public, both present or watching the meeting webcast, that the board is a consumer protection agency subject to the Open Meetings Act. I'd like to note at the start of the meeting that regrettably the board may be unable to establish or keep a quorum of members. As such, items on the agenda may be taken out of order, and some items may not be considered unless a quorum can be secured during a portion of the meeting. We currently don't have a quorum, but we're hoping to have one soon. Under the provisions of Business and Profession Code Section 4309 and board policy, members will consider disciplinary matters as a committee of the board unless a quorum is reached. I'd like to thank everyone in advance for your understanding and flexibility as we progress through the meeting today. Members of the board may be using an electronic copy of the meeting materials. Please be advised that such members are using their devices for this purpose and are not communicating with each other via email or other electronic means. I'd also like to remind everyone who's present, who's interested in receiving continuing education credit, to remember to sign in and out on the designated sheet in the back of the room. This meeting is being webcast. We respectfully request that when called upon to speak, that you come to the speaker's table and speak directly into the microphone, like this. This will ensure that those individuals watching the webcast are aware of all discussion and actions. I thank you all for attending. I'd now like to take a roll call and determine if a quorum can be established or if the board will be proceeding as a committee consistent with the provisions previously mentioned. I guess I already gave you some advance notice but that we don't have a quorum, but I'm going to call roll anyway, so let's start.
Alan Chad, professional member.
Shirley Kim, public member.
Debbie Veal, professional member.
Well,
You know who you are?
I'll come back.
Maria Serpa, professional member.
And Greg Lippy, public member. Okay. First order of business is public comments on items not on the agenda and agenda items for future meetings. Do we have any? Don't all jump at once.
Aha.
Okay. Push the button and the light turns green. Do you see a green light?
The red's not on, so I don't think they've been synced up. You just
Okay. No, we've got to get, he's going
Oh,
to,
yeah.
okay.
Sorry about that.
It is.
You don't have that.
That's how we got him to come out.
Are we good? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Mark Rouse, pharmacist since 1984. I'm just calling to beg the question or ask the question about complaint number 2018-83274, which I filed on behalf of pharmacist Linda Triplett, who was disciplined for going to the bathroom.
I'm sorry, just really quick. If you filed a complaint, we don't want the board members to hear about it because there could be what's called an ex parte communication. And then if the complaint does become an issue, it would be presented to the board. So the board can't hear the details until it works through the process.
Perfect.
I would recommend perhaps that you follow up either with enforcement staff or the executive officer after the meeting.
So Julie Ansel, who's one of our chief of enforcements, is actually in the back of the room if you would like to step out.
Perfect.
I'm sure she's happy to.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Now we're going on to recognizing and celebrating the pharmacists who've been licensed in California for 40 years or more. Do we have any here today? Well, some So much for the celebration. Okay.
Does that mean we don't have cake?
And I've got all these pins that I can't give away. I guess I'm going to be wearing a lot of pins. Okay. The next item, because we don't have a quorum yet, we have to skip. So we can go right on to the petitioners.
So we need to recess until the judge appears. I believe people were told 9:30.
Okay. If you didn't hear, we have to recess until 9:30, waiting for the judge to appear for the petitioners.
Can we not do number 5? Farmers University?
Nothing because it requires action.
Okay, we're recessed till 9:30. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to start, we have another member now, so for the record, we're going to do roll call again. Alan?
Alan Shad, professional member.
Shirley Kim, public member.
Debbie Veal, professional member?
Greg Lippy, public member.
And Ryan Brooks, public member.
Maria Serpa, professional member.
Great. Now I'm going to turn the meeting over to our judge.
I'll just yell. Good morning. My name is Judge Rowan. I am presiding over these 3 hearings today. I believe we're starting with Miss Jennifer Horner. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jarvis, you are all set? I am. Is there anything we need to address as far as Ms. Horner's matter prior to going on the record?
The only thing, Your Honor, is that we have submitted, or she has submitted, a letter that was not in the original packet. I have provided a copy to each board member and to yourself for review.
Thank you. Do all the board members have that additional letter?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Park, anything from you?
No, nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Excuse me. We are on the record before the California Board of Pharmacy to review the petition for reinstatement of Jennifer Horner, OAH number 2019-090188, agency number RPH 52366. My name is Heather Rowan. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings. I've been assigned to preside over this matter. Prior to going on the record, the board, I took roll. There are 6 board members here today, which I understand is not a quorum. So we are before a committee of the Board of Pharmacy today. May I take the appearance for the Attorney General, please?
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. My name is Christina Jarvis, Deputy Attorney General. I'm appearing here on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California and the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of petitioner?
Good morning, Your Honor. Tony Park, attorney for petitioner Ms. Jennifer Horner.
Thank you. And Ms. Horner is seated to your right, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, prior to going on the record, I gave a brief overview of the process that we will follow, and I'm going to truncate that for everyone in the everyone who's viewing and for the board. We will start with a statement by Ms. Jarvis on behalf of the Attorney General that gives a history of this matter. I will ask Mr. Park if he or Ms. Horner would like to make a statement. Ms. Jarvis will ask questions, and then I'll open it up for the board's questioning. The board's questions focus on rehabilitation, and as always, I encourage the boards to listen to everyone else's questions so that the petitioners are not answering the same questions over and over again. We will conclude at that time. Once the matter is submitted today, I have 30 days to issue a proposed decision. And that decision goes back to the board for its final review. Ms. Jarvis, did you want to begin with a statement?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. And I would like to clarify that my role here is not adversarial to the petitioner, but it is intended to protect the public interest and ensure that the board has sufficient information with which to make a decision today. This matter arises out of an accusation against a pharmacist who revealed more than 30 questions from the pharmacist licensure exam that she had recently taken to her pharmacist licensure exam preparation course company. So there is quite a lengthy history here. It goes all the way back to 2001. But on or about January 9th, 2001, petitioner took the pharmacist license examination. Prior to doing so, petitioner signed the examination instruction sheet acknowledging that the exam questions are confidential. On or about March 26, 2001, the board issued a pharmacist license to petitioner. The day prior, on or about March 25, 2001, petitioner wrote to the company with which she had taken the pre-licensure exam prep course and provided that company with more than 30 questions from the examination that she remembered. These questions were then reproduced by the exam company and distributed to its students to prepare for upcoming exams. The accusation was filed on April 20th, 2004. Petitioner admitted this conduct in full and entered into a stipulated settlement for a 3-year term of probation, which became effective September 2nd, 2005. On or about December 6, 2005, the petitioner notified the board that effective December 1st of that year, she had moved to Virginia. Petitioner's probation was therefore tolled, and it remained tolled for more than 3 years, which is a violation of probation condition number 13. On or about March 31st, 2007, the petitioner also allowed her pharmacist license to expire, which is a violation of probation condition 10. On March 24th, 2010, the board filed a petition to revoke probation against petitioner for the 2 violations set forth above. Petitioner failed to file a notice of defense to contest the petition, and her license was revoked by default, effective August 5th, 2010. On or about August 19th, 2011, the Commonwealth of Virginia suspended petitioner's pharmacist license due to the revocation of the California license. And therefore, on or about October 13th, 2011, petitioner wrote a letter to the board stating that she had only recently discovered that her license in California had been revoked and admitting that she had neglected to provide the board with a current mailing address. Petitioner asked how to resolve the revocation, so the board treated the letter as a request to set aside the default, which was obviously untimely. And so on November 14th, 2011, that request was denied, and she was notified that she was eligible to seek reinstatement 3 years after the effective date of the default decision. On or about November 30th, 2011, an administrative hearing in Virginia was held regarding petitioner's pharmacist license in that state, and on or about December 19th of that year, the pharmacist license in Virginia was reinstated, and she was reprimanded by the Board of Pharmacy. Petitioner also states in her petition packet that her pharmacist license in the state of Maine was similarly disciplined due to the revocation by default of her California license. At this time, I would like to submit Exhibit 1, which is the petition packet with all of the attachments provided by petitioner, along with the underlying disciplinary action.
Thank you.
And I would ask that Exhibit 1 be admitted into evidence for all purposes.
Mr. Park, you and your client have had a chance to review the packet.
Yes, Your Honor. We were the ones that actually provided the packet.
Any objections?
None, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at this time, it is now petitioner's opportunity to address the board.
Mr. Park.
Thank you, Your Honor. So for the purposes of today's, to try to make this as meaningful of an engagement as possible, we'd like to, after I give a brief opening sentence, if it pleases Your Honor and the Board of Pharmacy, we'd like to kind of go into a QA session where I ask the petitioner a couple of questions to demonstrate her circumstances at the time as well as her remediation efforts since this, the original cheating incident approximately almost 20 years ago now. So if that is okay with everybody, I think in hindsight, we can look at this incident as a very poor judgment, and I think you'll soon hear that the petitioner will fully agree. But this happened, almost 2 decades ago, and since then, the petitioner, Ms. Horner, has undergone substantial not only remediation but also lessons in life, the birth of her daughter, and the reconciliation that she's had to undergo in trying to explain herself in the eyes of her now 15-year-old daughter. to her current standing, good standing as a practicing pharmacist in an outpatient setting at her place of work at CVS, I think in total show that Ms. Horner is a good pharmacist that made a really bad error in judgment in her past. And so I'd like the opportunity to have Ms. Horner engage in a conversation, if you will, for the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, Ms. Jarvis, do you mind sharing your microphone so that they're not moving back and forth? Thank you.
She need to be sworn in.
Yes, she does.
I turn it off when I'm not talking.
Ms. Horner, raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. So the meeting's being webcast today, and it's the microphone that's going to get your voice into the webcast. So I've only heard you say 2 words, but your voice is kind of low, so I just want to make sure you speak into the microphone when you speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Park.
Thank you, Your Honor. And before I forget, for the record, I'd like to formally introduce our new, the one document that was not originally submitted within the petition. I believe it is a single letter of recommendation from a California licensed pharmacist. And I submit to Your Honor, for the record, to be admitted into the evidence, the formal recommendation letter from pharmacist David Chiarelli.
I'll mark this as Exhibit 2. Do you have any objections to Exhibit 2?
No objections.
Thank you. Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I guess to start this off, I know that the Board of Pharmacy has fully reviewed all the record, and I do not want to waste the board's time, but I do believe that to have an appreciation for the circumstances and facts involving Ms. Horner's life at the situation where the cheating incident happened, and make no mistake, it was a cheating incident, I'd like to spend some brief overview and history of how it is. Ms. Horner, how is it that you actually came to California when you started out? I believe it was Maine?
Yes, sir. I was relocated to California in the year of 2000 due to employment. Sorry. In 2000, I relocated to California for employment for my husband. So we relocated for his job, and I needed to obtain a license to practice here in the state of California.
So what state were you licensed as a pharmacist before you came into California?
I was originally licensed in the state of Maine.
Okay. So when you came into the state of California back in, when was it again?
2000.
2000 or thereabouts. Clearly you had no California license at the time, correct?
Correct.
So how did you get the idea of taking the Morse Cody Board of Pharmacy exam course at the time?
I never would have known about it. It was recommended to me by some fellow employees that I take a review exam or a review course to prepare for the licensure exam here in California.
Okay. So you signed up for the course, the Morse Cody review course. You took the course. Did any time during the course, did Mr. Morse Cody himself teach the course, or how did his involvement play out?
He taught a portion of the class. He taught the law portion of the course.
And during his portion, was there any mention of this notion, this idea of going into the board exam, memorizing questions, and then after the board exam, feeding them back to the course?
He asked the class to submit questions if they remembered them. He did not ask for you to willfully enter the exam and try to remember. He asked if in the event you finish your exam and you remember some questions, would you please submit them for future students to use in preparation for future exams.
And was this an open shout-out request to the entire course?
Yes, it
class
was.
Members?
Yes,
And
it was.
approximately how many members would you say were in attendance for this review course?
Several hundred.
Several hundred?
A couple hundred, maybe.
During the review course, were there actual sample tests, questions that were provided to you?
Yes, during the course that I attended, we received a packet of information. A lot of it was just review information, but part of that packet included sample test questions to practice taking test questions in preparation.
And did that strike you as odd at all? Well, first of all, let me back up. Was it your understanding and belief that those test questions could ever be used as for future test questions on the actual board exam?
I wouldn't expect that the board would use the same questions over again, no.
Okay. So let's, and did Mr. Cody offer any sort of like an enticement or inducement, like a bonus or
No.
some cash or
No,
some benefit?
no, nothing like that, no.
Okay, so it was just out of the kindness of the heart.
It was just
Of the
to
students
to
there.
try to help future students, yes.
So let's fast forward to the examination itself. You're sitting for the exam. Did at any point during the examination you thought to yourself, I have to memorize some questions to feed the questions back to the course?
No, my focus was on passing the exam. My focus was not on remembering questions or memorizing anything.
So after the examination, please tell the board and the judge how it is that you came from the moment you walk out of the exam to writing the letter to Mr. Cody and feeding the questions back to Mr. Cody.
After an exam like that, it's, I think, normal to sort of reflect on it, which I did. I reflected on the exam and how it went and how I thought things, how I answered questions, et cetera. So during that reflection process, I was remembering questions, which I did submit to Mr. Cody and his class for future students,
And how exactly did you submit the questions to Mr. Cody?
just through the mail.
A Dear Mr. Cody letter?
Yes, sir.
And what was your motivation when you wrote that letter to Mr. Cody?
It was truly just to try and help students in the future. I found the sample questions that were given to me very helpful in preparing. It was a practice that happened when I was in pharmacy school. Older students provided younger students with old exams, and it was a common practice. Of course, looking back on it, I realize how wrong it was, but it was something that was normal to me, and again, just was trying to help students in the future to prepare for the exam.
So your belief and understanding at the time was upperclassmen help lowerclassmen, and you were essentially perpetrating that concept.
Yes, sir.
And you got nothing out of doing that from
No.
Mr. Cody or the course? Or?
I did not.
When it came to, so tying that into, I believe, and the board members, within our additional petition package, there was a number of continuing education ethics courses that you took.
Yes.
Can you kind of summarize, maybe a couple of concepts that tie directly into this ethics problems that you were faced at the time?
Sure. I think the most relevant thing that I took away from some of these ethics CE classes that I have taken was the concept of normative versus non-normative practices, meaning sort of the difference between what is socially acceptable and what is right. And to me, it was socially acceptable to provide help to younger students. It was something that started for me as a student in pharmacy school and continued in this class. Of course, it is not right. It is very wrong. Of course, it is not an ethical thing to do, and it is a form of cheating. At the time, I saw it, again, as a socially acceptable practice. And that is something that I have taken away from some of these courses that I've taken, is that there is a difference between what is right and what actually happens.
Let's, I'd like to talk about a little bit now about the whole series of instances that ultimately led to the revocation of your pharmacist license in California. So going back to when you first received the accusation, I believe at the time you had entered into a settlement agreement with the Board of Pharmacy, correct?
Yes.
And the settlement called for a certain number of years of probation.
Yes.
So what happened between the finalization of that settlement agreement to getting your license revoked? In other words, what made you think it was okay to move and not notify the Board of Pharmacy of your change of address or change of circumstances? Can you go through that?
Sure. It was unintentional to not notify the Board of Pharmacy of my change of address. When I moved, at first, I had a temporary address, which I did notify the board of. When my address became permanent, that is when an oversight on my part, I failed to notify the board of my address change. As a result, I did not receive a renewal notice for my license, and I allowed my license to expire.
So during the, so you moved from California to a temporary address?
Yes, sir.
And then you did notify the board of the temporary address?
Yes, I did.
And then from the temporary address you moved to a new permanent address?
Yes.
And that's the address that you did not notify to the board?
Correct.
Did something happen in your life during that time period which may have caused you to kind of forget about this?
Well, things that fell through the cracks for several reasons. I was trying to get licensed in Virginia. I was trying to set up a new residence for my family and I. I was trying to work, and I was also chasing around a 2-year-old. So
Why did you move from California to Virginia?
again, it was for work for my husband.
Which is the same reason why you came from Maine to California.
Correct.
So you just kind of followed your husband all
I do.
around the country?
I follow him all over the place.
And your home state was what again, Maine?
My home state is New Hampshire, and I, out of pharmacy school, was licensed in the state of Maine.
Okay. So when you failed to notify the Board of Pharmacy of your permanent change of address, it never dawned on you that maybe you should reach out to the Board of Pharmacy of California at that time?
It just fell through the cracks. It just was not first and foremost on my mind.
So when was the first time you heard about the California action to revoke your license?
When I heard from the Virginia Board of Pharmacy that my license was suspended for that reason.
And so just procedurally, what happened in Virginia when you got your California license revoked?
Because of the revocation here in California, the state of California had no choice but to suspend my license until they could have a hearing. At that hearing, my license was reinstated.
Virginia?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mr. Park, I'm going to excuse you. I'd like everyone to take a look at your cell phone and turn it off, if you could, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
So, all right, so Virginia, when they suspended your license, was the first time you were aware of the California action.
Yes, it was.
And what happened in Virginia? You lost your license?
I was suspended for a period of time. I can't remember how long it was, about maybe 6 months or so, until I could have a hearing.
Okay. Did you eventually get your license in Virginia?
Yes, I did. Yes.
After, was it a hearing or an
It was
appearance?
it was a hearing before the board, much like this.
Okay, and your license status in Virginia is currently what?
It is
Is it
active.
clear?
It's active and clear. I currently practice there.
Any limitations in practice or encumbrances or
No.
restrictions?
No.
You also, you also hold a pharmacist license in Maine.
Yes, I do.
Tell us what happened to Maine.
Similar to Virginia, when they were notified of my revocation here in California, it wasn't a suspension of my license. It was I was not allowed to renew my license at the end of the calendar year until I could have a hearing. Again, I had a hearing before that Board of Pharmacy, and again, the license was reinstated or allowed to be renewed.
And your current status of licensor as a pharmacist in Maine is clear?
Is clear, yes.
Any restrictions on practice or encumbrances?
None.
None. Why do you need then, well, do you ever plan on coming back to California working as a pharmacist?
I don't foresee myself trying to practice here in California, no.
So you don't really need the license in California to practice as a pharmacist anywhere, pretty much, correct?
No, but my issues here with the Board of Pharmacy in California have caused me problems over the years, as you've heard. It's caused me to lose my job. I had to seek employment from another employer.
Could you give I
Sure.
believe you have at least one example of that.
Yeah, so I worked for Rite Aid for many, many years. In Virginia, Rite Aid has been acquired by Walgreens Company. So when that happened, I became a new employee to Walgreens. At that time, they looked into their new pharmacist licenses. The revoked status came up, and it is their policy to not employ pharmacists that have an issue with their license in any state, whether or not they practice there. So I did lose my job with Walgreens. I now am employed with CVS.
So your main problem, or the main reason why you need licensure in California is to basically preserve your job?
No, it's not the main reason. It's certainly, these consequences happened because of my issues here, but it's important to me to get my record cleaned up, and to get to the root of the problem here, and try and I want my record clean just for its own sake, so that I can continue on, with a clear conscience, and just go on with a clean slate.
One more thing. I believe there's an issue with the state of Massachusetts, if I recall.
Yes, I also hold a license in Massachusetts. That license is in revoked status for the same reasons that happened with both Maine and Virginia. I simply I did not have the means to defend that license at the time, so I had to let that go. My hope is that once I can get this cleaned up, I can then go back to Massachusetts and work on cleaning up that one too.
But why do you need Massachusetts?
I don't need it.
Okay.
I don't need it. I just, again, want my record cleaned up.
Would you characterize yourself as kind of on this mission to clean up your record? And
I would say so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So your daughter was how old? Or she was born when all this started to happen?
She was a newborn when this issue began for me, and she's 15 now.
Does she want to be a pharmacist?
It's not her. I don't think it's her thing. She's more creative, not so much scientific.
So she's a teenager, and she has some modicum of understanding of life and life experience. Have you talked to her about? Does she know what's going on with you?
She does. She has an idea of what's happening. She knows that I have issues with this board of pharmacy. She knows that I cheated. She knows the reason. She knows that this has caused problems for me several times over the years, which, including that suspension of a license in Virginia, including a need for me to appear before the Maine Board of Pharmacy to defend that license there. She knows that my license is revoked here, and she also knows that it's revoked in Massachusetts. I am trying to use this experience as a teaching tool for her. First and foremost, do not ever cheat, ever, in any way, shape, or form. If you are in doubt about something, ask. Rely on your own knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. Don't just go with what's socially normal. Don't just go with the flow. Stand up for what you think is right. Second, there are consequences for your actions, always. Doesn't matter if you think they are small or trivial actions. There are consequences. And finally, we all make mistakes. And it is our responsibility to deal with those mistakes, to own up to those mistakes, and to try and clean up after oneself after making such mistakes.
If it pleases Your Honor, we'd like to make a closing statement at the end. Would that be okay?
That's fine. Yes. Is that all for now?
At the extent of the petitioner's testimony.
Ms. Jarvis. Mr. Park, if you could share your microphone with Ms. Horner. Thank you.
I neglected to state earlier because of the additional letter today, but the respondent did submit 9 letters of recommendation, 7 of which, obviously not including the one today, were able to be verified by board staff prior to today, that they were authored by the person which they say they are authored by, and that those people were aware of the discipline and stood by their recommendation letter for all the reasons stated in each individual letter. All right. Now, Ms. Horner, you stated that you had moved to Virginia, you had a couple different address changes, you had updated your address with the Virginia board because you were getting your license there, but you were also suspended by Maine, and you found out about your Maine suspension, so you updated your address with the Maine Board of Pharmacy, but not the California Board of Pharmacy?
I believe I had always updated my address with the Maine Board of Pharmacy.
Okay. And today, do you understand that what you're asking for is a reinstatement to practice here in California, but generally the board would allow that reinstatement only on probation with the same terms that you previously had?
I do understand, yes.
And so but you don't intend to come back to California in the next 3 years to practice, correct?
I do not.
So you understand that if the board reinstates you with the same terms you previously had, that in 3 years you'll just be revoked again?
My hope is that we can come to some kind of settlement.
And what would that settlement entail?
something that I could live with, not living here in California.
So if your license were to be reinstated without probation or with whatever settlement you are contemplating, would you anticipate that your license would be free and clear here in California?
I would hope so.
And that would be free and clear with only serving approximately 3 months of your probation term back in 2005.
I understand that, yes.
If you were reinstated free and clear, what would happen if your husband got transferred back here the day after that?
To California?
Yes.
Well, I don't foresee that happening. If I was reinstated free and clear, I would hope that I could practice.
No other questions. Thank you.
Questions from the board. We'll start at my left. Ms. Serpa.
Thank you. I have no questions, but thank you for your time and your presentation. Very well done.
Thank you for your time.
And likewise, no questions. Thank you for your time. I know it's not easy coming before these boards, so I appreciate your
Thank
candor
you.
today.
Thank you for your time.
I have one question. How many questions were on the exam that you took?
How many questions were on the exam?
Yeah,
Oh, I don't remember.
approximate.
100 maybe? I'm not sure. Probably more than that. I really don't know.
I
It was a
just
long
don't know
time
that
ago.
I could remember 30. Yeah, that's a great memory. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I happen to be an employee of CVS also, and at our council's request, I abstained from voting on cases with fellow employees.
I see. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of our main function here is to protect the public health of the people of California. Now, and so I don't see that you've done that except for the cheating on the exam, which, you understand that. And
Yes, sir.
so, but I am curious, this is just idle curiosity. How did you get caught?
How did I get caught?
Yeah,
Oh.
Evidently a lot of students were sucked into this
Yeah.
because he had all these questions.
Yeah.
And it was just the social norm, like you say.
Sure.
And you're young and naive at the time. And then a bureaucracy thing, and then you thought you'd get out of it. Yeah, I don't understand what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
But how did it come to light that you were this criminal?
Objection, Your Honor.
Let's go right back to the question. Did you?
I'm sorry. I'm not entirely sure. I think that one of the instructors turned me in. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
I think that my questions arrived, and I think that one of the office staff or instructors or something felt compelled to turn in.
They had taken the ethics course.
Of course.
No offense.
No.
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Jarvis, anything further?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
And Mr. Park, you wanted to make a brief statement.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I'll be very brief. So our ask here, let's kind of get to the heart of the matter. The ask here is for the Board of Pharmacy to fashion a final resolution on the matter that allows Ms. Horner to allow her to live her life as a pharmacist outside the state of California. And given the fact that, even according to Mr. Schad, the heart of the issue had nothing to do with her competence as a pharmacist, had nothing to do with the safety of Californians. It had to do with a stupid misunderstanding and a mistake as a young pharmacist. And we would hope that the board take everything into consideration and fashion a final resolution where she is allowed to practice as a pharmacist outside of California. Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing further, the record is closed. The matter is submitted. We're off the record.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you both. We're going to...
Real quick, how many days do we usually get a response back
When you say response, what do you mean?
on our decision? We'll go to close, we'll discuss this case, and how many days after that do we take to respond on our final decision?
Well, your counsel might be a better answer, but I have 30 days to issue a proposed decision that will then come back to the board for your approval. I believe by statute it's 100 days. Do you have a... 100 days after,
Comes by operation of law, but it's a little bit quirky because we don't have quorum. So under Business and Professions Code Section 4309, the decision will be mail balloted to the full board, and then the full board will act just like it would on any other proposed decision.
But it'll be with our recommendation.
Correct. It'll be the committee's recommendation to the full board.
thank you. You're free to go. Based on the agenda, our next petition is Ms. Medarata here. Am I saying that right? Okay. Come on up and have a seat.
And Your Honor, before we officially go on the record, I'll provide you with the packet this time.
Thank you. Anything we need to address before we go on the record?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Medarata, was it you who had an additional document for the board?
Push the button here.
Yeah, just that one letter that my employer had received.
What is the status of that letter?
The status being,
Have you received the copies back?
yes, I did.
Do you have them with you?
Yes, I do.
Could you please provide them, and we'll get them passed around? I'll give the board a minute or two just so we don't have to read them while anyone's speaking.
There you go. Yeah, she gave me 10.
Thank you. Okay. We are on the record before the California Board of Pharmacy to review the petition for reduction in penalty of Rashmi Medarata, OAH number 2019-090191, agency number RPH 57047. My name is Heather Rowan. I'm an administrative law judge. I've been assigned to preside over this matter. Prior to going on the record, a roll was called. There is not a quorum of the board. Today, we will proceed before a committee of the board. May I take the appearance for the Attorney General, please?
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. I'm Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis. I am appearing here on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California and the board pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 and Business and Professions Code Section 4309. My role is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest and provide the board with sufficient information to make a decision today.
Thank you, Ms. Jarvis. And Ms. Medarata, you are present and representing yourself today, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Prior to going on the record, I gave you a brief overview of the hearing procedure. Do you have any questions before we begin?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. If you could, Ms. Jarvis is going to give a statement first, but I want to make sure that when you speak close to the microphone. Ms. Jarvis.
Yes, thank you. This matter arises out of an accusation against a pharmacy that also held a sterile compounding license, and Ms. Medarata, who was the owner and pharmacist in charge, known as PIC. Ms. Medarata had been the PIC since 2008, and the pharmacy was not and had never been licensed or registered as a drug manufacturer. This petition only addresses Ms. Medarata's pharmacist license, her personal license. In 2015, during an annual inspection conducted by the board, it was discovered that petitioner was compounding large amounts of veterinary eye drops and ointments in anticipation of later selling them to veterinary offices. These eye drops and ointments are dangerous drugs pursuant to statute, were compounded without patient-specific prescriptions, and were outside the compounding limits permitted under pharmacy law. Ultimately, 5,700 bottles of these eye drops and ointments were sold to veterinary clinics rather than to the ultimate users. These 5,700 bottles are therefore adulterated, as they were manufactured in a facility that is not licensed as a manufacturer. In addition, petitioner failed to have a written quality assurance plan for compounding, extended the beyond use date of 200 of those bottles beyond the expiration date of the components used to compound the product, and used sterile water for irrigation rather than sterile water for injection on 6 different compounding dates. There are therefore 6 different causes for discipline, all falling under the general umbrella of unprofessional conduct, which is Business and Professions Code Section 4301, subdivisions J and O, that the petitioner violated statutes and regulations governing pharmacy. Those statutes and regulations include Business and Professions Codes, regulations, and the Health and Safety Code. The accusation in this matter was filed on January 13, 2017. Petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement with the board that became effective at 5 p.m. on November 29, 2017. The stipulated settlement provided that petitioner's sterile compounding license was surrendered, and the pharmacy permit and petitioner's pharmacist license were placed on probation for 3 years. Petitioner admitted the misconduct. Petitioner has served approximately 20 months of the 3 years, leaving 16 months remaining. To date, petitioner has been 100% compliant with probation. She has paid approximately 2/3 of the investigative and prosecution costs, has completed a minimum of 4 hours per year of remedial education related to pharmacy operations and the role of a PIC, and completed an ethics course within the first year of probation. Petitioner also submitted continuing education certificates totaling 103 hours from February of 2017 through November of 2018, submitted 5 letters of recommendation, 4 of which were verified. However, the 5th did not return the board's voicemail messages. Petitioner also submitted a 5-page letter in which she addresses the circumstances of the disciplinary action and her petition before the board today. Today, the petitioner requests specific modifications to her probation term. She wants paragraph 13, the tolling of probation, deleted so that she is not required to work a minimum of 40 hours per month. She also requests a reduction in the investigation and prosecution costs, which is in paragraph 8, as she is finding those costs to be financially straining. And finally, petitioner requests that paragraph 7 be modified, which would allow her to work as a pharmacist consultant or PIC in the future. At this time, I would like to request that Exhibit 1, which was previously provided to the judge and is the petition packet, the notice of hearing, and the underlying disciplinary action, be admitted as Exhibit 1.
Mr. Moderator, have you had a chance to look at the documents in the packet?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any objections to my admitting it?
No, I don't.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at this time, it is the petitioner's opportunity to address the board.
Before you do that, do you have, you want to, she said she wants to reduce costs. Do we have a number of what the costs are at this time?
I do, Your Honor.
I think it's in the packet. Go ahead.
It is. So the remaining cost recovery is $4,500, and she has paid $9,000 so far. So the total cost recovery, I believe, was $13,500.
Thank you.
Initially.
Okay, appreciate that. Did you want to make a statement?
Yeah.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. whenever you're ready, go ahead and begin, and remember the microphone.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, to the board for giving me this opportunity for a hearing. The past 1 year and 9 months has been a humbling, yet a learning stage for me. Yes, at the beginning of my disciplinary action, I went through the entire emotional roller coaster ride that I'm sure every licensee experiences under similar circumstances. I had to make some emotionally difficult decisions, like letting go of my business, which was essentially in every way my creation, my baby. But as time went by, I started to reflect upon what brought me to this place. As a pharmacist, patient care and patient safety has always been my mantra. I've never or never will intentionally compromise my patients' care and safety. There were never any incidents or accusations of patient harm or patient complaints, but yet a disciplinary action was taken against me. So why did this happen to me? I have realized that patient safety goes hand in hand with interpreting and following the regulations, as these regulations are the framework for patient safety, especially in the high-risk field of sterile compounding, where even a so-called small indiscretion could mushroom into a devastating situation. I have come to the realization that my inability to interpret the law accurately got me to this place. And for that, I'm truly sorry. I have also realized that as a pharmacist in charge, it is ultimately my responsibility to ensure that every staff member, including a staff pharmacist, follows the documentation, such as assignment of a beyond use date. I also clearly understand the importance of maintaining proper quality assurance protocol. I have made a conscious decision to make every effort to do my own due diligence, to interpret and follow the law as accurately as possible. And when in doubt, I shall reach out to the resources that are available to us, such as the Board of Pharmacy, inspectors. To be licensed as a pharmacist is a privilege, and I shall never take this privilege for granted. Since the inception of my probation, I have been compliant, like Ms. Jarvis said, with all the terms and conditions of my disciplinary order. The ethics course was an eye-opener. I have also completed 40 hours of sterile compounding continuing education. I have attended board meetings in person or by watching webcasts. This year, I also attended meetings held by the FDA on CGMP guidelines for outsourcing facilities. I've been making my penalty payments on time, and I have attended every meeting that was requested by my probation inspector. In addition to the above, I have stayed engaged with my community as a patient consultation pharmacist by providing one-on-one consultations to patients, as well as doing presentations at community events. However, although I've been managing to work a minimum of 40 hours per month, gaining meaningful employment to meet the requirement of working a minimum of 40 hours per calendar month has been a challenge. At the time of this application, my tenure at the last place of employment was about to end, and I was not sure of being able to secure any future employment. The challenges being that almost every employer is looking for a licensee without any restrictions on the license. No one wants to hire a pharmacist on probation, and most of them, the ones who have been my colleagues, friends, and they very openly expressed their concern about additional oversight by the Board of Pharmacy as in the form of probation inspector. Furthermore, due to the rapidly changing regulatory landscape of the compounding pharmacy industry, which is my field of expertise, opportunities for a compounding pharmacist on probation are almost non-existent. I was, however, able to get employment with a 503B. It's a startup 503B. But recently, it was brought to my attention by my employer that I cannot even work as a pharmacist under whose supervision manufacturing of drugs can be performed in an outsourcing facility that is registered with the California Board of Pharmacy. This position was not of a PIC, that is a pharmacist in charge, or even a pharmacy consultant, but just a pharmacist. I do understand the board's concerns about these positions as well, and that is why I'm here today, asking for modification in some of these terms and conditions. I am a compounding pharmacist, and that is my field of expertise. But gaining employment in my field of expertise seems impossible while I'm on probation. And that was the reason for my petition to remove the penalty of either tolling of probation, or if I may be allowed to work as a pharmacist in a supervisory role if an opportunity were to present itself. Last but not the least, yes, not having a steady paycheck come in with no meaningful employment, making the payments towards the fines is becoming a financial drain on me. So any consideration towards that would be highly appreciated. In other words, all I'm requesting for is to be able to work and stay engaged in my profession. I have always enjoyed and respected my profession, and I want to be able to practice it with dignity and pride. In many ways, being a pharmacist is my identity, and I want to have a clear professional identity and legacy. All the modifications I had requested 9 months ago in my petition are basically the only restrictions I have remaining in my disciplinary order, except, of course, for the 4 remedial CE in pharmacy management, which is to be completed in year 2020. But today, also upon the advisement of my probation inspector, may I please respectfully request the board to consider an early termination of my probation so that I can move on and start practicing as a compounding pharmacist in my field. I shall be extremely grateful to the board for this consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Medarata. Ms. Jarvis, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Medarata, you signed the stipulated settlement on September 6th of 2017, is that right?
Yes.
And your attorney, Tony Park, discussed it with you at the time?
Yes.
You understood the requirements that you were asking to be removed or reduced here today that you would be required to comply with, did you not?
Yes, I did at that time. However, when I was trying to secure employment in compounding pharmacies, like I said, after my first year tenure had expired, some of those pharmacies, some of the employment opportunities were as a pharmacist in charge. I have had a lot of experience in that field, and that is why they were approaching me with that. But the moment they used to come to know that I was on probation, obviously I could not, get that employment. So at that point, I had reached out to the probation analyst and my probation inspector to find out if, since I'm no longer, because my stipulation also said that I could continue working as a pharmacist in charge for People's Pharmacy, which was my pharmacy at that time. But my question to them being that since I'm no longer working as a pharmacist in charge for People's Pharmacy, may I please be allowed to maybe secure employment as a pharmacist in charge for another pharmacy? That was my thought process at that time. However, those opportunities are no longer there. And at that time, I was advised by one of the probation analysts to petition for modification in my probation terms.
So the question that I have, and I'll see if I can phrase this in an understandable way. If you don't understand it, please let me know. What makes you think, if you've had trouble finding employment as a staff pharmacist while on probation, that you would be able to find employment as a PIC, or the other thing was to be a pharmacist consultant while you're still on probation?
Yes, I understand your question. However, a lot has happened in the past 9 months. I am actually no longer seeking employment as a pharmacist in charge anymore. Like I said, I was offered the position of a pharmacist who will be supervising manufacturing or production of drugs in a FDA-registered outsourcing facility, which is the requirement of a FDA-registered 503 facility. They are not in requirement of a pharmacist in charge. All they're looking for is a pharmacist under whose supervision manufacturing of drugs can be conducted. I went ahead and my employers went ahead and they offered me the position because it was made clear to us that pharmacist in charge was not a requirement for a 503B at all. So we accepted that position. However, when my employer applied for a license within the state of California, he was informed by the board that since I was the person who was given the responsibility to supervise the production of drugs in a 503B, based on my probation terms, they could not issue a license. So they had to, at that point in time, they immediately removed me from those responsibilities of supervision of manufacturing of drugs. And they hired another pharmacist for that. But again, that is what I'm trying to say here, that it's becoming very difficult for me I want to secure employment to be able to meet the tolling of probation. But even though I'm trying, on one hand, I'm required to meet the tolling, required to work. But on the other hand, when I am getting an opportunity, there is a barrier that comes up because of the terms of my probation. That is the challenge I'm facing, and that is why I'm hoping that the board members are understanding my plight at this point in time. If the board or if you feel that I should not be supervising or I should not be functioning as a pharmacist, then meeting that term of tolling of probation becomes difficult for me.
And that was the letter that you submitted today?
Yeah, I submitted the letter where the board kind of informed my employer, the company that employed me, that due to such and such reasons, I should not be.
And Your Honor, I have no objection to this being marked and admitted as Exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Thank you. So that I understand, this company was willing to employ you as an overseer of the operations, but is not willing to employ you as a staff pharmacist?
Yeah, I mean, that is, as a staff pharmacist, because in an FDA outsourcing facility, there is no so-called requirement of a pharmacist in charge. That is a requirement of a pharmacy, licensed pharmacy. So I was just one of the staff pharmacists. I was not going to be the only one who was going to oversee. But when they asked for the names of the pharmacists, my name was also submitted as one of the pharmacists, and that is when we received that letter. So the intention was never for the company to have just me as the person who is overseeing the production. To begin with, there were two pharmacists. So I'm just wondering if I could, my hours again have been reduced from close to 40 hours to just about 20, 25 hours per week. And it's a challenge I'm facing right now.
I also note that the letter is addressed to an individual with the last name the same as yours.
But he's the managing member.
Okay, and are you related to him?
Yes.
Okay. How are you related?
He's my husband.
Okay. So is this basically a small family-owned company?
No. It's not. I have no ownership in it at all.
Who does?
He has ownership.
Your husband?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have no other questions.
I'll open it up to the board, starting all the way on my left. Any questions?
No questions, but thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, thank you for coming and your presentation. You made in your opening statement, you said there was you've never received a complaint. Is that correct?
I'm sorry? Who?
In your presentation, I believe you stated that you had never received a complaint. Is that correct? Did I hear you correctly?
Of patient harm.
Of patient harm?
Yes.
But, but I believe you were manufacturing eye drops for horses, correct? So I'm assuming they would not logically file a complaint.
I understand.
Okay,
Yes.
sometimes our patients, can
Yes.
speak for themselves, sometimes they can't.
Yes.
And because they can't doesn't mean harm wasn't given.
I understand,
And
yes.
hopefully you'll understand that distinction when you're working in the field of veterinarian and pharmaceuticals. And so I do see that as a major complaint because you had put harm not only to the patient who happened to be an animal, there was harm to the doctors who accepted the drugs that were backdated also.
I completely understand, and that is where I said that I took the time to reflect upon what brought me to that stage, and that is something that I have actually realized that, when you are, and absolutely I understand your point because the patient, an animal cannot express any form of harm or safety issues, but in my case, I think by just not being able to interpret the law accurately and then not asking for help where I should have, reaching out to the board or the inspectors to get some clarification on the law. That was one of the violations of the pharmacy law, and I have definitely come to that realization. I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest violations is where you're not a manufacturer.
No.
Under the law. And so I'm assuming you knew that going in. I'm assuming you intentionally violated the law in the first place. And then you were regretful because you got caught violating the law.
To be very honest, it was a very fine line. It was very hard to, the law that I basically violated at that point in time was the law of office supplies to veterinarians. And it was the law where I could not provide more than 72 hours worth of medications to the veterinarians to be further supplied to their patients. And that is where the volumes that were going into each bottle, that was the point that was being contested. How do you justify that this volume that you're providing is a 72-hour supply as opposed to... so we were, and yes, one other thing I wanted to admit was that when we get caught up in our business and we are running our day-to-day business, we lose sight of, what is the regulation actually telling you? You are at times just doing what the rest of the people are doing. I mean, some big reputable big businesses are practicing or conducting their businesses a certain way and they've been doing so for years. So maybe it's okay to do it. No, that is not the case at all. You have to do your own due diligence and you have to understand the law and question it. And that is the realization, definitely. And I 100% agree with you on that. There should have been a flag out there saying that, hey, you're getting to a point where you're manufacturing. That is not right. And that's the reason we stopped. In fact, even before the accusations had come in, I had stopped making those volumes. The volumes had gone down significantly. And that's the reason I stopped even my sterile compounding pharmacy business. And we are, I guess, now going towards the route of the 503B outsourcing facilities, which is more towards manufacturing.
I have another question for you. So if I'm hearing this correctly in your testimony, FDA will not allow you to oversee the manufacturing in your husband's business. Is that correct? Because of your current situation?
No, it's not the FDA. The FDA has not objected to it at all. The FDA has not.
The California Board of Pharmacists,
California Board of Pharmacists,
has objected to it. But since the rejection of the license, I'm assuming you still currently have a job at this facility, correct?
Yes,
And the
but
re-
yes,
in a different capacity.
in a different capacity.
And so what I am hearing is that you'll continue to be able to make or comply with those 40 hours of tolling. Because I think if I heard you correctly, you said you were working about 25 hours a week. The tolling provisions are 40 hours for the month, correct?
Yes.
And so I'm trying to
I
figure out
understand, yeah.
why.
I completely understand.
Yeah, no, I'm just
Sorry.
trying to, figure out what you're really asking for, because you can comply today. You're not having a hard time getting a job because you have a job, correct? The requirements are 40 hours. You're getting 25 hours, a week. That's 100 hours, so you're 60 hours over what is required by this board under the terms and stipulated agreement that you signed to. So what is your real intention?
Well, my real intention today is to see if the board will be, I can be considered for an early termination.
But there's no barriers other than how much you're making. Is that correct? You do have a job.
I do have a job,
and-
yes.
And I'm assuming you're not in risk of losing this job anytime soon.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I might, because I might, yes.
All right. I thank you for your time. I have no other questions.
Before we continue, there's been a request for a brief break. So we're off the record. 5, 10, what do you want? 5 minutes? Okay, so we'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay?
Great.
All right. We are back on the record. We're going to pick up right where we left off. And to my left, do you have questions, Mr. Libby?
Yeah, but first I wanted to say that my colleague to the left took my question about the animals and talking. However, I did say I disagreed with him because I used to watch Mr. Ed. So horses do talk.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Nice.
However, I do have a question, and an additional one. You were compounding products that had beyond use dates that extended beyond the expiration dates of the components. You must have known that. Why would you do that?
Actually, if I were to pull out all the documentation on that, the beyond use date was an error that was made by my staff pharmacist, and the error, the beyond use date that was actually assigned to the product was actually the right beyond use date, but the inspector had only the first 2 formulations. So this formulation had 4 formulas. So there was formula number 1, formula number 2, formula number 3, and you combine all 3 formulas, and then it's the last formula. So the formula number 1 had a certain beyond use date, and when he kind of documented the beyond use date of that particular formula into formula number 2, he mistakenly extended it by, he actually wrote, sorry, not extended, he actually gave the date 5 days shorter than what actually the date should have been. So ultimately, the beyond use date that was assigned to the product was actually the correct one. But the formula number 2, he made the error of assigning it a more conservative dating, which was not the case. So when it was being dispensed, I, as the pharmacist in charge, at some point, I found that discretion, and I said that in discretion, and I said, and I pointed it out to him. He corrected it, and I kind of sat down with him, and I told him the importance of accurate documentation. again, it is something which is very hard to explain when I don't have the formula sheets in front of me. That was something that was made in 2015. But at the end of the day, the beyond use date that was actually assigned was actually the correct one. But yes, if you look at from formula number 1, formula number 2, the inspector never got formula number 3 and formula number 4. He just had formula 1 and formula 2. So he just went by those 2 formulas on that.
Did you state that in your original hearing?
Yes, it was all, yes. When my attorney, when he had presented the case, all that was stated.
Was it? I guess there's no way to prove it. It's just you.
Yeah,
saying
well,
it.
yeah, and I do have those documents if I don't have them on me right now. But
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Ms. Field?
Good morning.
morning.
One question I had is, when I looked at your petition for reduction in penalty, this is probably just an oversight, but question number 15 asks if you have ever had disciplinary action against your pharmacist license in this state or another, and you answered that question no.
I think that was a question I had actually asked the probation analyst. How should so I also kind of explained that the only disciplinary action right now I have is the one that is pending against me.
So you would probably, in correction, you would check that yes, because you actually do have a disciplinary action against you?
Yeah, but at that point I was told that you have to just explain as to that you're aware of your disciplinary action.
So you're stating that the board advised you?
No, they did not advise me. They asked me to use my best judgment for that question.
All right. So I guess, so let me ask you the question. Have you ever had a disciplinary action taken against your pharmacist license in this state, the state of California, or any other state?
This state, California, yes, that's the one I am petitioning for.
Okay. So that was just an oversight?
Yes.
Okay. I kind of also was a little bit perplexed, like Mr. Brooks. You said your hours at Pantheon Labs has been decreased to 20 or 25 hours. Are you working as a pharmacist those 20 or 25 hours?
Yes, I am. My functions now are basically about to generate master formulations for for products that are in short supply, to come up with the formulations, to come up with the production process. We are not producing, and I'm not overlooking any of the production because it was made very clear that I cannot do that.
Right.
But as a formulation and drug information pharmacist, whenever clinics or hospitals and all are reaching out to our facility with questions on products, basically I'm the one who is answering those questions.
So if I'm understanding you right, a lot of times when we put people on probation, it's because we want you to kind of take a step back, reevaluate where you've been, reevaluate what happened. So you owned a pharmacy, made some pretty significant errors. You are under discipline. Okay, we're all good there. So actually the job you're describing that you currently have seems a perfect place for you to be, and not to be taking that step forward to be a PIC or a consultant until you really figure this out and make sure that you got everything right. And that's why you're on probation. So can you convince me why you, after 16 months, are ready to reestablish yourself as a overseer, a consultant, a pharmacist in charge, and why you shouldn't have kind of this more step back kind of position at this point?
Yes. The 1 year and 9 months has been a big learning curve for me. It was very humbling also. And I have stayed awake at nights trying to kind of reevaluate and look back as to what could I have done differently for me to not get to this situation. And I kept telling myself, if I were to do it over again, what are the changes I'm going to be making? What kind of conduct is going to be the right conduct to have this privilege of not just being a pharmacist, of being in a supervisory role, because the responsibility I had at the time was very big. It was not just being a staff pharmacist and checking, and it was basically overlooking the whole operations of a pharmacist and of a pharmacy and a sterile compounding pharmacy, which is a very high risk area.
Yep.
And so I have talked to myself. I have talked to myself. I have thought about this over and over again, and my probation inspector also has been very helpful with that, in guiding me and helping with that. So I feel that if I were to be given that opportunity, I will do my very best this time to not put myself in that kind of a situation again. And like I said, there are resources out there for us. There are board of pharmacies. There is FDA, and it doesn't take much to pick up the phone or to send an email. And if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, or if you're not sure, if you are in doubt about a certain law and it seems ambiguous to you or it seems gray to you, just pick up the phone or just send an email and wait until you get a response. And it kind of, that's all I can say. I mean, I have understood and I have really realized that.
How many questions since in the last 16 months, since you've worked with the other company and bringing the People's Pharmacy business in, and now that you're with Pantheon, you're not at a supervisory level, you're kind of more at a staff level. How many questions do you think you've asked your superiors about their specialty pharmacy compounding techniques that you've had questions about? Just roughly.
Well, I have not really had the, are you asking me a pharmacist, another pharmacist?
It sounds like you're practicing now as a pharmacist in this lab, as a kind of a staff pharmacist, and you have people overseeing you. And like you just said, you understand that, now you need to be better at asking questions. And so you're actually, what's happening is exactly what we want to have happen. We want you to be that staff pharmacist, and you've had 16 months to kind of grow. So I would just, how many questions have you had in the last 16 months so that you can grow and be that PIC in the future?
To be very honest, count a lot of questions.
Like what? Like what's an example of something that's been revolutionary to you?
A simple question like, at what point are we supposed to stop making a drug in short supply? You start making a drug in short supply, and at what point do you say, okay, I'm not going to, this is it, we cannot make any more because the drug is back on the market? At what point do we do that? Because as a business owner, the business owner is going to be all about, no, we have made it, we need to make profit, we need to sell it out there. But as a pharmacist, we need to know at what point we say, no, this is it, because the law says once the drug is out there on the market, you cannot. And that was a question I presented to the FDA. When I went for the FDA meeting, I said, at what point are we, until when is a company allowed to sell a drug in short supply? That was one question.
Just out of curiosity, nobody at Pantheon knew that answer?
There were actually a lot of questions about this. This question was actually raised, I think, even in one of the board meetings, the last board meetings, that was about the new USP 797 law, not USP, sorry, the new sterile compounding laws that are going to be coming up for the Board of Pharmacy. At what point is a pharmacy going to stop compounding drugs in short supply also?
That's
No.
okay. I mean, thank you. You don't
Yeah.
have to
This is-
think about 10 questions.
Yeah, and we are still getting different answers to that. And so we kind of had to come to a conclusion that, okay, I think the FDA kind of told us that you have about 60 days to stop, to move your inventory that you have already made, and after that you have to stop making that product. But again, there are a lot of different answers that are coming by, but the answer we got at the FDA meeting was that you have about, from different sources, that you have about 60 days to stop making it. Another question being, how do you know what is essentially a copy of a manufactured drug? What is what do you call the clinical requirement for a patient to be able to make a copy of those drugs? Those are some of the questions a pharmacist should be asking in a facility where the ownership is primarily by non-pharmacists, because they are.
I mean, and you should
Yeah.
have been asking back when you owned People's Pharmacy too, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And sorry.
So another question I had is, when you were describing a little bit earlier, and I can't remember if it was one of the board questions or part of your testimony, that you realized that the thing that you did wrong was that the eye drops you were making, the volume was too large, and if you had made less volume, you would have been okay. So how many bottles of eye drops were you making at a time?
The largest batch I made at that time for one product was 200 bottles. That was the largest we used to make.
So your thought is, if you had made a smaller volume, but you still had made 200 bottles, that you had
Yes.
been okay.
Yeah, because that is what the supervising inspector Acosta told me, that how do you justify 10 milliliters to be a 72-hour supply for dispensing? So we came to an agreement that 5 milliliters for animals, pets, is a better is how should I put it, is more appropriate probably than a 10 milliliter for 72-hour supply, because pets are so different from humans. Maybe 2.5 milliliters or 3 milliliters would be okay for humans, but pets are different. It is, I mean, try putting drops into a pet's, a dog's eye or a cat's eye. And our veterinarians who were our clients, they basically wrote up letters and they reached out to the board also, I think, saying that 3 mils is just not going to cut it. So that, the amount we were dispensing per bottle was something I was told.
So
but
you
also selling the drugs, providing these medications to the veterinarians who in turn were distributing it or selling it to their patients was unlawful. That is manufacturing.
Right. Okay, thank you. Because I was going to say, if
That
you
is
make
manufacturing.
200 eye drops and you
No,
don't know
that is
where they're going to go,
manufacturing.
you're
Yeah.
still in.
Yeah,
It
that
seems
is
like
manufacturing. Yes,
maybe
that
that
cannot be done under the
You need
pharmacy
to let
law.
her stop.
Sorry.
You need to let her finish so that we just have one voice on the
Yeah, so I was just going to go, because then I was going to ask you, so 200 bottles of 5 milliliters, it seems like perhaps if that's what you understood the board inspector to say, that was okay. I'm not thinking that there was a good communication going on there.
No, that was just about the 72-hour supply, but Making 200 bottles and distributing it under a pharmacy law was unlawful.
Let's see, and then you're asking for tolling to be totally put away, but it seems like maybe you don't need that to happen.
No, I think that is something that, because the petition was made, I sent in that petition application almost 9 months ago.
Yeah.
A lot has happened since then, so that is really not important anymore. I was just kind of explaining why I wrote all that.
Okay, and then I think you said that you wanted to decrease the cost because you weren't working, but now because you are working, maybe that is okay too?
I would really appreciate if you could look into that, if you can give me some kind of a modification.
And
It
then
is a large amount.
I think, is there $4,000, Ms. Jarvis, left?
$4,500 left.
Okay. And then the other modification was to allow you to work as a PIC or consulting.
Even that is actually because I'm not going to work in a pharmacy, because the kind of expertise I have, my field of expertise is more towards sterile compounding in batches, which is no longer applicable to pharmacies anymore. Pharmacies are about per prescription and per patient. So if I have to wait until, the board thinks it is appropriate for me to wait, that will be fine with me.
Okay.
But
So the main thing you're here today then for is to try to decrease the cost?
that will be wonderful.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
I'm exhausted from all this questioning. So I've got 3 or 4 questions myself. Okay, what does Pantheon, what kind of products is Pantheon involved in?
Well, Pantheon is not in production yet because, like I said, we are still waiting for the California Board of Pharmacy license.
And what do you know what they anticipate? Making?
The anticipated products primarily will be drugs in short supply.
Oh, okay.
And maybe some custom formulations that are required by ophthalmologists.
Oh, okay.
And other clinics.
Okay. Now, you presented this letter here. Why were you provided? Why were you designated to oversee the operations of this outsourcing facility when you knew that you were on probation? How did this come about that you were chosen for this role?
I am not sure actually, because
Oh, I see.
I think the
You were just as a
application, they just wanted the names of the pharmacists, and my name was given as one of the pharmacists.
Okay, so just in that role, you'd be supervising.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then the third question is, I want you to put into context. You said you've come here on the advice of your probation inspector, and so she. Tell me about that.
Oh no, she not advice of. I mean, no. We actually did have a conversation about this petition hearing, and this is all my doing.
Oh, okay.
I am the one who has petitioned.
Okay, great.
She kind of
Gave you direction.
gave me some direction on it. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from the board? Ms. Jarvis?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to reference, because petitioner did mention potentially changing her petition to request early termination of probation, that at this time she is not eligible for early termination. Under Business and Professions Code Section 4309, she must serve 2 years of probation before she would be eligible. She's not quite there yet. So she has a few more months before she can actually either make that petition or change any previously filed petition into that petition. And most of the comments that I have in regards to any recommendation have really been addressed by the board's questions. It seems clear that the tolling issue is really not an issue for petitioner. And being the consultant or PIC, although she mentioned that that was less important to her, I think that Board Member Veal accurately identified that that is the whole purpose of probation, is to protect the public, provide this oversight, and give the petitioner the time to, really in many ways re-educate herself as to her role before stepping out into that larger role. So really the only thing left to consider is the cost recovery, and I would leave that to the discretion of the board. Thank you.
Ms. Medarata, anything further you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think about the tolling of the probation. Right now, I do have the hours, but like I said, I am not sure if they would continue to keep me in that company because. It's a matter of now productivity and how much are you really bringing in. That is my only concern, that I may not be able to meet that requirement of tolling or probation. Although right now, yes, they have drastically taken away my responsibilities and my hours. But if I could also request the board or to you to look into that as well, that'll be very helpful for me.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it appropriate? Your current employer is Pantheon, is that correct?
Yes.
And the owner of that business is your husband?
Yes.
So he would be firing you, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I understand that could be a business decision, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there is nothing further, then the record will close. Anything further? The record is closed. The matter is submitted. We are off the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. You are free to leave. Does anyone need a break before we continue with the final petition?
If I may just have a minute, Your Honor, to pass out a letter that I will then address with the board when we go on the record.
Thank you. Is it Randawa? Is that correct? Come on up when you're ready.
One other note, just for the petition packet that was submitted electronically, they've been dates on the first page of the petition. So they're redacted in the version that I'm giving you today. The one that was submitted electronically, I don't think they're redacted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, and this is going to be a substitute. This was already submitted, and I need to substitute the page for anybody who has it in hard copy. Which appears to only be you. Do you have the petition printed out in hard copy?
Yes.
Okay, so about the 12th page of this petition, there is this facts heading, so it's page 3 of 25.
Okay.
It is, but that's harder for me to take away.
I'm going to follow you as you're talking.
And I'll put this on the record later, I just wanted to deal with it since, well, no, that's okay.
Ms. Jarvis, are you able to resubmit to OAH a redacted copy?
I could do that, yes.
I just think that if I put a note in our system and that is there could be an accidental, I mean, if somebody, it's only would be a public records request issue.
Right.
But I'm wondering if we have a corrected version, that will be much more obvious.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that, when I get back to the office. this
Okay.
afternoon, I can submit that, as long as your system can sort of substitute them, delete one out and just.
Well, it happened with the first petition as well. So what I see when I open it up is the petition packet, and then right above that says corrected petition packet.
Oh, okay.
So if there is a request, I believe that is the one, but I'll put a note in that says The reason it was corrected was due to the lack of redactions.
Okay.
Because, I mean, once it's in our system, it's not like I can seal it necessarily.
Right.
But I can put in a protective order for that page, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Is that what you were asking for initially?
Yeah.
The protective order for that one page?
Exactly. For this petition.
Well, that would accomplish the same thing. If I put in a protective order, that will show up. We'll do it that way.
Okay.
So,
I thought you were talking about the birthday. So, okay.
same thing, though.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to
I think I read it.
put the application under seal.
Right. So I can just resubmit it with the redaction, just so that then it would be the corrected packet
With the replaced page.
with the redaction and the replaced page.
Okay, I'll put in. Does everyone here have the corrected, I know, the corrected page? Ms. Jarvis, anything else prior to going on the record?
No.
And I believe that you said beforehand you have no documents. Okay. Additional documents, I should say. Okay, then let's go on the record. We are on the record before the California Board of Pharmacy to review the petition for early termination of probation of Paramjit Randhawa, OH number 2019-090194, agency number RPH 45898. My name is Heather Rowan. I'm an administrative law judge. I've been assigned to preside over this matter. Prior to going on the record, we established that there is not a quorum of the board today. We are sitting before a committee of the Board of Pharmacy. May I take the appearance for the Attorney General, please?
Yes, good morning. I am Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis. I am appearing here on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California and the board pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 and Business and Professions Code Section 4309. My role here is not adversarial, but is intended to protect the public interest and ensure that the board has sufficient information with which to render a decision today.
Thank you, Ms. Jarvis. And Ms. Randhawa, you are present and representing yourself today. Is that correct?
Sure, Honor.
Okay. Bring the microphone closer to you when you speak. Ms. Jarvis, let's address the housekeeping matters first.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. First, I passed out a page before we went on the record. The page was approximately page 12 or 13 of the packet that was previously submitted to the board. It has a fax header on the top, which is the easiest way to identify it. The fax header is dated October 3rd, 2018 at 16:21. And then on the far right, it says it's page 3 of 25. The issue with this page in the packet that was submitted to the board and to OAH is that it was printed on the back of a cures report. That cures report has confidential patient information of petitioners, and that was submitted by petitioner as part of her petition packet inadvertently, and was then provided to each of the board members and to the Office of Administrative Hearings. So my request is to essentially seal that backside of this page, which has the cures report, and then to substitute the page with the blank back that I provided to the board members today.
And what do I have in my hard copy packet right now?
In your hard copy packet right now, you have the cures report. I did not replace it until we actually went on the record to address it.
Okay. If I'm going to put that page under seal, I think I should keep it in my packet so there's something to seal, and add the other page.
Okay. Did I provide you with a copy of the additional page? I don't recall.
Not separately, so.
Okay. I will bring that up.
It's in here. I have one.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry. Is it still 3 of 25? It just doesn't have a backside?
Correct. So the front is a letter that was written by the Board of Pharmacy to petitioner, which at some point was faxed to petitioner or from petitioner and then was printed with this cures report on the backside. My assumption is that the fax machine was reusing paper and unfortunately reused this with confidential information on it. And then petitioner didn't realize that when she submitted it to the board. The board obviously disseminates to the board members and to OAH everything that is received from petitioner, regardless of what it might be.
So it was distributed to us by email.
Yes.
So that means that you have to get rid of those emails too, right?
I would request that all of the board members basically delete at least this page from the PDFs in the email
Right.
and delete the emails.
Got it. Thanks.
There was an issue with the application? You said something about birth dates?
Oh, yes. On the first page of the petition itself, there's a 2-page petition form. Ms. Randaw's birth date, date of birth appears. Yeah, and so I've redacted that on the hard copy that I provided you today, and I will upload a redacted copy to OAH's servers when I return to my office today.
Thank you.
And that holds true for all of the petitioners that were here today. So I will upload 3 new copies, essentially.
Okay, I'm having a hard time finding where I'm supposed to put this page.
That's why I couldn't find
It's
mine
in
either.
this, it's in the one that starts with your application. And it's on about page,
The petition?
yeah.
If I may approach, Your Honor.
Yeah.
I know I saw that too, but I don't know why it's not here.
See, in mine, it's page 13.
Yeah, so what I did is I had a tag in here and then I pulled it out. So you don't have it. So then you just need that one and this one because I wanted to remember what I was doing.
But wait, you're putting one with the stuff in the back.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the court needs
She
that.
needs that
Okay,
to
have
seal
something
it.
to seal. Okay.
That is-
Right,
okay.
that was why I have that one.
Okay.
So that I remembered to do this.
Well, that was a funny joke. Thank you.
Yes, I apologize.
Okay, so these 2 are Exhibit 1. I will create an order sealing that page. Anything else?
Oh, there's only one other thing. This petitioner had originally submitted a petition several months ago and submitted letters with that petition. The board's policy is that letters must be dated recent to the petition. Due to essentially just some clerical issues, the petitioner is required to resubmit the petition. And so the new date on the petition is June of this year. It was originally submitted much earlier, so the letters look like they are significantly older than the petition, but in fact, they were submitted with the original petition that was not reproduced here. So they're not too old, basically. So if that is a question for any of the board members, the board staff has agreed that those letters are sufficient, they were verified, and they can be considered.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Does the board have any issues with these administrative matters before we continue?
Nope.
Okay. Ms. Jarvis.
Thank you. This matter arose through an accusation that was filed due to a pharmacy technician in Petitioner's Pharmacy stealing hydrocodone from the pharmacy. Petitioner is a pharmacist and was the president and pharmacist in charge, or PIC, of her own pharmacy. This petition is filed only for Petitioner's personal pharmacist license. The facts are that on or about April 3rd, 2013, Petitioner filed a report of theft or loss of controlled substance with the board, reporting significant theft of hydrocodone with acetaminophen, which I will just refer to as hydrocodone here today, all attributed to one pharmacy technician. That technician was later convicted of grand theft by embezzlement. Her license was revoked by the board by default. A drug audit conducted by the board inspector showed approximately 93,000 tablets of hydrocodone had been stolen. Investigation revealed that petitioner had allowed 2 pharmacy technicians to sign for deliveries of controlled substances on 29 separate occasions between July of 2012 and March of 2013. The technician who was convicted of embezzlement admitted that she had been stealing hydrocodone for more than 2 years at the time that she was caught. There were 3 causes for discipline against the petitioner. First, as usual, unprofessional conduct pursuant to Business and Professions Code 4301, subdivisions J and O, but also other sections of the Business and Professions Code, including 4081, subdivision A, and then regulations section 1718, because petitioner failed to maintain all records of acquisition and disposition and to keep a current inventory of dangerous drugs and controlled substances. The drug audit that discovered the theft of the 93,000 tablets of hydrocodone also discovered other, less significant drug losses and overages as well. So there were significant issues with the petitioner's records. There was also 4059.5 subdivision A and Health and Safety Code section 11209 subdivision A for allowing non-pharmacists to sign for and receive the deliveries of dangerous drugs and controlled substances. And then finally, Business and Professions Code 4115 subdivision H and regulation section 1714 for failing to secure the prescription department and provide effective controls to prevent theft and diversion. The accusation was filed on May 28, 2015, and a first amended accusation was filed on March 1st, 2016. Petitioner admitted this conduct in full and entered into a stipulated settlement for a 5-year term of probation with the board, effective at 5 p.m. on September 7th, 2016. Petitioner has therefore been on probation for almost exactly 3 years, has 2 years remaining. Petitioner has also been 100% compliant with the conditions of probation and has fully repaid the investigation and prosecution costs of $13,489 and an additional $484 in probation monitoring costs, and that's generally for inspections. Petitioner has done at least 52.5 hours of continuing education from August of 2017 through April of 2019, and petitioner submitted 4 letters of recommendation, all 4 of which were verified. Additionally, there was some question as to whether petitioner had fully satisfied her community service hours for year 3, and she has in fact provided evidence to the board that she has done so. So as I stated originally, she is 100% compliant at this time. I have already submitted Exhibit 1, which is the notice, the petition, and the underlying discipline to the court, and I ask that it be admitted for all purposes.
Ms. Rundau, are you familiar with the petition packet that Ms. Jarvis is submitting?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objections to my admitting it?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted with the redaction of that certain page and the redaction of the birth dates.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at this time, it is now the petitioner's opportunity to address the board.
Did you want to make a statement, Ms. Rondalla?
Yes, Your Honor.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready, and make sure you're speaking into the microphone.
Thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to come in front of you today. I have been a pharmacist since 1990, first in the state of Massachusetts, and then after passing the California board in 1992 in California. I started working for a Thayer pharmacy in Massachusetts, and in 1992 I joined Walgreens, who brought me out to California. I worked with Walgreens from 1992 to 2006 until I became an independent pharmacy owner. My experience has taught me a lot. Never until 2013 had I experienced anything like this. I would like to make it clear that by no means am I trying to shy away from my responsibility of serving the remaining 2 years of my probation. However, At this point, and I do hope you feel the same way, the 3 years I have served up to now, I have served with sincerity and seriousness. It is evident how seriously I approach the probation and how completely I have gone to fulfill what was asked of me. I put processes and cross-checks in place to verify and make sure all activities in the pharmacy are being conducted following all the rules and regulations of the Board of Pharmacy. I currently do my physical inventory reconciliation every 2 to 3 months and have a perpetual inventory log for all C2s. My C2s are in a locked cabinet. In addition, I have installed 4 more cameras, making a total of 8 cameras in the pharmacy. I have learnt a very valuable lesson, albeit the hard way, that trust your employees, however, verify that trust. I love being a pharmacist and will continue to serve my patients with a smile and my outstanding customer service skills. This has been a terrible experience and one that I never want to go through again. I wish to put this behind me. It has caused a tremendous hardship on me and my family because of the loss of business due to insurance companies and wholesalers and patients themselves not wanting to do business with me. Please forgive me for my negligence. I take full responsibility for it and will make sure nothing like what took place will ever happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wandoa. Ms. Jarvis, do you have questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Does the board have questions, starting with Ms. Serpa?
No questions, but thank you for your heartfelt testimony.
Thank you very much for coming. I do have, a question. I mean, it's when you're running your pharmacy, how often do you reconciliate, your balance sheet? Because, a loss of, 93,000, pills had to affect the bottom line at some point in time. And it would seem that if you're on top of your own business, that would come to light and the light would, bulb would come on and say, hey, the numbers aren't matching up.
Currently, I do it every 2 to 3 months.
And how often were you doing it prior?
I was doing it biannually.
Right, okay, so twice a year.
Correct.
You were doing it before. That's my only question. All right, thank you.
No questions.
Ms. Field?
Thank you. That was actually a very nice, succinct, complete statement. I appreciated that. Going off of what Mr. Brooks said, though, 93,000 pills, that would have been quite a bit of revenue. Did you not notice a discrepancy in sales, which I think is kind of what you are trying to ask?
This was in 2013, so Vicodin was a Schedule 3 or 4, and I think it was very nominal. It was about, in those days, the 1,000 count jars, they used to be somewhere around less than $100.
Okay. Right. So, I mean, it was probably thousands that you're missing, but in the big picture, you're saying you just didn't pick it up. You just thought, those darn insurance companies are under reimbursing me yet again. Got it. Let me see. Were you a pharmacist in charge when you were at Walgreens?
Yes, I was.
Was there any training classes that they taught there that about, doing the inventory or, employee management or anything like that?
We had classes at all times, but when we're working in an independent pharmacy, it's like a family.
Yeah.
And you.
Can I ask you to move the microphone closer?
Sorry. And I would never have thought that somebody could do that. We work so closely together, and I just never dreamt that somebody would be stealing.
And I think in her statement, she said that she was consuming at first, it was for her own use, and then she ended up selling. So you didn't notice any change in behavior as she was consuming the Vicodin?
I don't know if she was consuming it. However, I did notice that she was a mother of 4 children, and I tried to help her in every way I can. But then I noticed now in hindsight, she was buying new jewelry and a new vehicle, but she told me her husband was doing better, and I believed her.
I know when you work in a pharmacy, you're shoulder to shoulder, you do trust, and sometimes they help you so much. So you also stated that insurance companies, wholesalers, and patients. So patients, do you have something posted? Is that what they're seeing?
Yes, ma'am, I have my sign posted. I'm in a medical building, and some patients just come in, although I do have a addendum posted underneath it. It's no fault of the pharmacist, but patients just choose not to, not even purchase a candy.
And so what's happened like with the wholesalers?
Once they realized I was under probation, they dropped me. And even now, there's wholesalers, they look at my license, pharmacy license, and they just don't want to do business with me.
So are there times you aren't able to purchase the medications you need, or is it just at a higher price, or what does that mean?
Fortunately, there has been companies that are willing to work with me, so I'm very grateful for that, and I make ends meet. I serve my patients at the end.
And then insurance companies, you mentioned that some of them don't want to work with you. What does that mean?
They dropped me.
Because your license is, the pharmacy license is on probation?
Correct.
Explain
Not your personal license.
Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's a sore point of mine, and I know many people on probation experience this. So can you enlarge on that? Is the contractors,
Yeah, can I just expand? Do we want it to be her personal license, or is it the pharmacy license at the insurance companies?
I believe it's the pharmacy license.
Okay.
So when we fill out every 2 years, we fill out and then they have a decision to either continue to do business with us or don't. Right now, Express Pharmacy, my consultant's letter, I have to, every 2 months he comes in, so they want me to send that to them.
see.
So every insurance company has to.
And you're asking for an adjustment on your personal license, not on the pharmacy license, is that correct?
For both.
For both? Is that what the petition is?
That is not what it says in the petition. The petition only has the personal license listed and only states that if the license is restored, that the petitioner would continue to practice as an independent pharmacist.
And so, Ms. Jarvis, because the petition didn't include the pharmacy, does that mean we are only considering the petitioner today, not her pharmacy?
I would need to actually request DCA counsel to weigh in as to whether or not we can consider this for both licenses.
I'll take a look, but my instinct is that it's only the license, the individual license.
So she'd have to come back to the pharmacy?
She would have to return.
So why don't
the
you just,
petition
if people
for
didn't
the
hear, why don't you just?
Pharmacy. So my first instinct is that the only license that was submitted to the board was the personal license. I don't see references to it, but I can take a closer look if we take a break and see if I've missed anything. But my instinct is that it has to be the license that was submitted to you, because there was no background done on the other probation, so you don't have you haven't had.
So, Counselor, may I make a
The pound.
suggestion, Judge?
Go ahead.
Maybe you take those 5 minutes or 10 minutes to look it up to make sure, because I'm assuming as a petitioner, might want to postpone this hearing to include everything that you're looking for, because if we just rule on your current petition, you will have to resubmit another petition. It may take a much longer time for you to get back to a hearing. So you might want to give them that option if it's possible, or if it is an option.
So I don't
Does
have-
it really? Oh, go ahead.
with the petitions, I don't get a certification of licensure like we do in other hearings. So, and the pharmacy license is not listed on here anywhere?
It's not listed in the petition at all. It is, of course, listed in the underlying decision. You know, the underlying decision is filed for the pharmacy and the pharmacist. However, like the stipulated settlement that was provided was as to the pharmacist only. We don't even have the stipulated settlement as to the pharmacy license before the board here today. So that's one reason that at this point, I believe we can only address the pharmacist license. However, I think that Board Member Brooks's recommendation to take a little break and have a discussion is probably a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think she'd want to postpone this one.
Yeah. Their decision, not ours, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I think the most efficient thing to do would be if there's more questions to finish up the hearing portion, and maybe.
Would that include questions as to the pharmacy as well?
Well. I guess the question would be: do you have different questions that would apply just to the pharmacy?
Well, but part of part of a stipulated agreement, there's 2 parts. One's going to be on the pharmacist and your penalties, bills, probation, community service, all those normal things that we have. And then my question, that what we don't see because it's not before us, was there a stipulated agreement on the pharmacy itself and what rules that pharmacy itself have to follow? That's something that's not before, so we cannot see.
Okay, then yes, I would say we would hold off because it could be moot and
Correct.
maybe not a good use of time. So it sounds like if we took a break, Ms. Friedman, would you be able to advise the board, or do you need more time?
I think I think I need 5 minutes to look through the packet and double check my work.
That's fine. Okay. So, was there anything else from the board on the pharmacist license? We got interrupted.
Yeah, I'm done.
No question, thank you.
Debbie did a good job there.
Okay. All right. Ms. Jarvis, did anything further?
Not at this time.
Okay. So we are off the record. Let's take maybe take 10 minutes, and we'll see where we're at that point. And Ms. Rondar, you can leave your seat, but don't go anywhere.
Make me look good, so thank you.
Okay.
Huh?
Good question.
I'm trying to hide. I am trying to hide.
So we are back on the record in the matter of Paramjeet Randhawa. We went off the record to allow counsel to research the issue of which license is at issue. Ms. Friedman.
Thank you. So in looking at what the board has in front of it, I think the board is going to be limited to acting on a reinstatement specifically only to the pharmacist license that Ms. Parashit, sorry if I mispronounced that, holds. And the reasons for that are several, but the petition packet that you have only includes the terms and conditions of the individual license. The petition itself also kind of references from the first person and speaks to I am seeking, I've completed, as opposed, it's singular, not joint. And then the petition itself only lists the singular license number that's associated with the pharmacist license. And then finally, the agenda actually only lists the pharmacist's license. So I think a combination of all those factors, unfortunately, they limit the board's jurisdiction to the pharmacist license.
And just a quick question, do we know of the terms and conditions of the pharmacy is what they are?
No, and that's exactly the point, is that if you look at the petition, if the petition packet, I don't know the exhibit number, I apologize, but it's a stipulated settlement as to only the pharmacist license specifically.
And then one last, this is a more of a clerical question for the petition, for you, Counselor. Could we fast track it to the next meeting to discuss the pharmacy?
At the quarterly meeting, you
Yeah.
mean? I think that's a logistics
question.
issue, and whether or not the board wants to put that on the agenda.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
And if I may, also, petitioner would have to actually file a petition for the pharmacy license. I mean, I assume after this discussion, we'll do.
I recommend you do it quickly.
But additionally, just for the record as well, board staff does significant work in doing the background for these petition packets in order to ensure that the petitioner is eligible, that the letters of recommendation are verified, things like that. And none of that was done for the pharmacy itself.
Fair enough.
Anything else from the board on that point? Okay. My understanding then is that we had concluded with the hearing portion. Ms. Jarvis, was there anything further?
Yes, just a brief statement in conclusion. I read the letter from the consultant pharmacist that is working with petitioner and the pharmacy, actually, considering this most recent discussion. And I found that letter to be very persuasive, and I would suggest that the board members review that in making their determination today. Thank you.
Ms. Rondawa, anything further you wanted to add before we conclude?
Yes, I have a short closing statement, Your Honor.
When you're ready.
Thank you again for allowing me to come forward today, and I hope you can see what a great pharmacist I am. I am being punished today for something I reported. Again, I hope you can find it today through my petition of early termination to release me from this probation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The record is closed. The matter is submitted. We are off the record. Thank you. You're free to step down. Thank you. I will turn it back over to you. I believe your next step is in closed session, but that's up to you.
Yeah, okay. Now I have to see where we are.
Do you have the agenda?
No, I have a different.
Okay.
But thank you. Yeah, I mean, but there are things we can. Okay, yeah, let's do it immediately. We are now going into closed session, and we will reconvene at the end of closed session, but at that time we will just reconvene in order to end the regular meeting.
Unless you have quorum.
Yeah, unless we have quorum, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
It's
So
not.
apologize for that.
Yeah. And then one other thing that we just housekeeping-wise, we need to announce that the litigation, the case number, may I do that?
Yes.
So the litigation item that the board will consider, I apologize, it doesn't matter if you don't have quorum.
Yeah, we don't have quorum, we're not going to.
Never mind.
Okay, you can see we're a little bit confused because of the situation. Thank you for coming, and if you want to stay around, you're welcome. But we are concluding our work here. See you at the next meeting, I hope.